What's your never meet your hero's tale? I've met Mark and Craig Kielberger and Greg Mortensen and interviewed both of them. I was going to interview Quentin Tarantino as well, but it was already 1 a.m. and he wanted to go back to his hotel. This was all for my high school newspaper. I'd say that with the exception of Quentin Tarantino, my heroes were quite rude and condescending. Tarantino, on the other hand, autographed my book, which is something he said he never does, of his screenplays, Reservoir Dogs and True Romance, at the end. I still have it a decade later. Although the public opinion is that Tarantino is vain, he was the nicest celebrity I've met and incredibly down-to-earth.
It's interesting how people can surprise you. You meet these big names thinking they'll be cool, but sometimes they're not. Then there's Tarantino, someone you'd expect to be full of himself, but he was chill and even took the time to sign your book. It's nice to see someone like that, especially in that scene. Those moments stick with you. Sounds like a solid memory.
Old story, but I grew up in Morocco and we never had any good television. Just two channels, Channel 1, GovMT, and Channel 2, Benny Hill on Saturday nights. A friend of mine had gotten tapes of Star Trek with Kirk and Spock, except it was badly dubbed over in Arabic. I grew up thinking Shatner and Nimoy were Egyptian because of the Egyptian accent overdub. A few years after arriving in Canada, I am at a charity event where Shatner is co-hosting. I go to introduce myself, and being a dumbass and not doing my research, start greeting him in Arabic. He turns around and tells me, "Are we really doing this? Do you have any shame?" and walks away. I thought for years after that, it was bad to speak to other people in Arabic in Canada. Turns out thinking about it years later that he probably thought I was some jackass trying to speak to him in Klingon.
That's an interesting story. Growing up with limited TV options can lead to some funny misunderstandings. I can see how you thought Shatner and Nemo were Egyptian from that dubbing. Meeting someone you admired and then having that reaction must have been a bit awkward at the time. It's funny how certain experiences stick with you and change the way you view things later on. Just goes to show, culture can really shape our perceptions.
I was on a night out in Glasgow with a couple mates at a pretty well-known pub called Oranmore. At about 2 in the morning we decided to call it a night and head home. We were standing outside the pub joking about. This was the middle of January, and it was freezing, so the street was pretty empty apart from a guy running a little hot dog stand with a huge dude next to him inhaling a couple of hot dogs. My mate points out jokingly that the dude looked like the Hound from Game of Thrones. I laughed, then looked a bit closer. It was him. Pissing myself laughing, I start to walk towards him when he shouts mid-chew, "Fuck OFF." It was absolutely hilarious, and come to think about it, it's exactly the way I hoped he'd be.
That sounds like a wild night. Running into someone like that must have been unexpected. I guess it's always funny when you see someone who looks like a character from a show. The response from him is classic too. Just goes to show, you never really know how the night will go. At least you got a good laugh out of it. Definitely a story to tell later on.
Anyone say Shaun White? Everyone I know who has ever met him says he's a dick. And I even remember during the Winter Olympics he fell and his teammates cheered. Like, you have to be a huge asshole when your teammates are happy when you fail during the biggest winter sports event in the world. Edit. I always knew my top comment would be about how much Shaun White sucks as a person.
Seems like Shaun White doesn't have the best reputation. It's interesting how athletes can have careers that shine while their personalities don't. The whole cheering thing from his teammates during the Olympics really says a lot. It shows that even in a competitive sport, respect matters. If your own crew is happy when you mess up, that's a clear sign that something's off. Sometimes talent isn't enough. Being a decent person matters too.
I ran into the Manning family while tailgating at an Ole Miss game. Eli and Archie were super nice and signed autographs. Jim McMahon from the '85 Bears and some famous actor I can't really remember was there and being nice too. But Peyton wouldn't even talk to us and refused to sign anything. I was only 11 at the time and had my 8-year-old brother with me.
Sounds like a cool experience. Meeting Eli and Archie must have been a big deal. It's always nice when players take time for fans. Pretty wild running into Jim McMahon and a random actor too. But Peyton not wanting to chat is kind of a bummer. I guess even celebrities have their off days. Your brother probably looked up to you for being there, though.
Kind of the opposite, but I live in the Baltimore area, and my friend was out getting lunch with his mom and elderly grandma. Joe Flacco came in with someone, maybe dad, and sat down. Grandma is getting on in years and isn't as sharp as she used to be, but makes up for this with being loud. She walks over to Flacco's table and starts scolding him and telling him to play better. My friend and his mom retrieved his grandma and tried to apologize to Mr. Flacco. Joe just smiled at them and said it was all right and that he had a grandmother too. Just a hell of a class act.
It's pretty wild how a casual lunch can turn into a memorable moment like that. Your friend's grandma just going up to Joe Flacco and giving him some advice is something else. It's good to hear that Flacco took it all in stride and was kind about it. Makes you realize that even famous people can handle things with grace. A cool story for sure.
Art Spiegelman. Some of you will recognize him as the author/artist of Mouse, the only graphic novel ever to win a Pulitzer. Not a hero, per se, but definitely someone I looked up to. He came to a conference I'm associated with, and I was the person who drove him around and generally made sure he got to where he needed to be when he needed to be there. He and his agent were demanding, the agent more so, and rude. He insisted on smoking everywhere, and I got the sense that he demanded to smoke everywhere just because he could, not because he really needed to. He was particularly rude to the college kids who came to see him, which was very disappointing. He went on to our very short list of people who will never be invited back.
It's interesting how people can let fame get to their heads. I had a friend who met a local artist once, and he thought it would be inspiring to chat with him. Turns out, the guy was pretty standoffish and didn't want to engage. My friend said it kind of ruined the idea he had about artists being down to earth. It's a reminder that not everyone lives up to the hype.
Cary Elwes was rather disappointing. He was at a local Comic-Con a couple years back, and he was just a regular grump. He had a couple security guards constantly hovering around him that would shoo anyone away that attempted to take a picture. Stan Lee was there later that day, and he was a peach. Didn't get to meet him, though. I will always regret that. Even Norman Reedus didn't have as many security guards, and 80% of the people there were comprised of his rabid lunatic fangirls.
It's interesting how some celebrities can be so different in person. I remember once meeting an actor from a show I loved, but he was super unfriendly. He just seemed tired and annoyed by fans. Then I saw another actor who was way more down to earth, chatting with everyone. It just shows you that not everyone is as cool as they seem on screen. Social interactions can really change your perspective.
Not my hero, but I once witnessed Detroit Pistons. Tayshaun Prince ruin a little kid's childhood. My friends and I were at a Subway close to where the Pistons play. The only other people in the Subway were a young boy, wearing a Pistons shirt, and his mother. In walks Tayshaun Prince, and this kid started to lose his shit. His mother told him to wait till Tayshaun ordered his food to approach him. The kid waited patiently for about 5 minutes, then approached Tayshaun as he was walking to the door. All this kid said was, "Hi Tayshaun," and smiled. I've never seen an adult give a child such a disapproving look. He rolled his eyes and began to walk out the door. The kid started crying as my friend yelled out, "You're a fucking dick."
That story brings back memories. I remember being around sports stars too. It's wild how a single moment can crush a kid's enthusiasm. It's like you expect them to be heroes, but sometimes they just don't meet the mark. I get it. Superstars have their lives, but a simple interaction can mean a lot to a fan. That kid probably looked up to him. It's a tough lesson to learn.
Back in 1989, my mom bought my dad tickets to a comedy show for his 40th birthday. The comedian was Jon Stewart, and at the time, he wasn't very well known. My dad heard some of his stuff and really liked what he knew of him. They were in the front row in a room full of 20-somethings. Naturally, Jon Stewart picked up on this and relentlessly teased my dad for being the old guy the entire night. Not just a small dig at one point, literally on and off jabs the whole night. Little did he know it was his 40th birthday, and it hit a little too close to home. He is a comedian, though, and stuff like that is to be expected, so my dad didn't hold it against him. At the end of the night, he gave my dad a huge hug and thanked him for being such a good sport and giving him some solid material. My dad has been a huge Daily Show fan ever since and still mentions that story to people. Not really a bad story, but it started out that way.
That's a cool story. Your dad must have had mixed feelings during the show, but it's nice how it turned out. Jon Stewart's humor can catch you off guard. It's funny how a night meant for celebration became fodder for a comedian. And now your dad's a fan because of it. Shows how a little teasing can create lasting memories. Just goes to show, laughter connects people in unexpected ways.
It's important to stress that every hero can have a bad day or moment when you don't want to meet him or her. Regina Spektor is a wonderful person when meeting with fans, but once she herself admitted to be evil. From her Facebook, today's equation, me plus travel delays plus hunger equals me plus confusion plus exhaustion equals guilt because a nice girl at the airport gate asked for a photo as I was about to murder the styrofoam container of salad after being there for endless hours of waiting, boarding, and disembarking again. And I had to nicely decline. Afterwards, I felt like the Grinch who stole Thanksgiving, but I got to eat. Thinking of all the travelers still stuck somewhere at this very moment. Cheers, Reg.
It's relatable when even someone admired like Regina Spektor has off days. Everyone gets overwhelmed sometimes. It shows she's human too, juggling travel frustrations and hunger. The guilt of not being up for a photo is real. I can recall a moment like that after a long trip, just wanting to recharge instead of being in the spotlight. It happens to the best of us. We all have our limits.
Okay, this is more of a never really thought of him as a hero before, but it's nice to see he's a good guy. Story. A story from my daughter. She was with a bunch of kids in an art camp who spent a day in New York City, visiting museums and such. They stopped into a store and ran into Tim Gunn, the guy who does Project Runway. He took the time to speak with each of them and look at and even critique some of the artwork that they had with them. He even took a picture with the whole group. Great experience overall, especially given the cutthroat reputation of New York fashion community.
It's cool to hear about moments like that. It's easy to forget that some people in the spotlight can be genuine and nice. Tim Gunn seems to have a good vibe and took the time to connect with kids. It's refreshing to see someone who's well-known still being down to earth and encouraging. That must have made the camp a lot more memorable for your daughter and her friends.
Wine specialist here, who was a huge perfect circle / tool nerd in high school, met Maynard Keenan at a small event for Pussifer to conduct a private tasting of his wines. Started asking the dude about his wine / process. Hardly knows a damn thing about them. He also treated his fans that paid high dollar to have this tasting with him like absolute gutter trash. One man tried to tell Maynard how much his music meant to him, and Maynard straight up turned his back on the man mid-sentence and walked out the room.
That's kind of wild. You'd expect someone like Maynard to appreciate the fans, especially after they'd paid for a special experience. It's surprising when your heroes don't live up to the expectations. That private tasting sounds interesting, but it must have felt awkward seeing that happen. Guess people can be different in person than what you imagine from their art.
Worked at Barnes & Noble where Nicholas Sparks was doing a signing for a new book. Dude is kind of a jackass. In front of his fans, he is really good, But in the back, I watched him take a poster that someone poured their heart into, look it over, and say, "Can you believe the shit people make me?" Then tear it up. He also did and said a lot of things that made him seem really pompous. You could tell the guy was used to people sucking his metaphorical dick all the time, never looked at his work the same again.
That sounds like a rough experience. Meeting authors you admire can really change your perspective. It's disappointing when they don't live up to the expectations you have. It's like you want to see the human side of them, not just the persona. I guess it's a reminder that talent doesn't always come with humility. I wonder how many others felt the same way after that encounter.
My brother used to be a Power Rangers freak and idolized the Red Ranger. One day we found out they were filming at a park near our house, so we went there and he actually got to meet the Red Ranger. It was like he was meeting God. But he's also the same guy who was arrested just recently for allegedly stabbing and killing his roommate.
That's a wild story. It's interesting how someone can be a childhood hero and then turn out so different later. Meeting a favorite character can be a huge moment, but then hearing about serious stuff like that really changes the perspective. Life has its ups and downs, and it's a reminder that people aren't always what they seem.
Not exactly meeting him, but I used to work for a catering company that arranged catering for private planes. One summer, I was responsible for arranging all the catering for Bruce Springsteen. He would make really simple orders: burgers, chicken ribs. Nothing hard to get. One night, someone in his family, an uncle I think, was taken to the hospital, so he canceled a show to go home and be there. His manager called and said to cancel the order, but that they'd still pay because of the short notice. I contacted the caterer and arranged for the food to be brought out 3 hours earlier than originally scheduled and confirmed the delivery. A week later, I walk into work, and there was a thank you card from Bruce on my desk and a case of beer for the office to split. That man is truly a class act.
That's a cool story. Working in catering can lead to interesting experiences. It's nice to see someone like Bruce Springsteen showing appreciation like that. A simple thank you can mean a lot. And good on him for taking care of family first. The beer for the office sounds like a nice touch too. Just goes to show you that even celebrities can be down to earth.
I'm in a wheelchair, and as a result, I can get very interesting and telling responses from people. Nick Offerman has no equals. I know we're supposed to give bad stories, but Nick Offerman is so cool it hurts. He got down on one knee to take a pic with me, and I told him he didn't have to. He goes, "Son, everyone should kneel for you," and he was dead serious. I laughed thinking it was a joke. It took me 3 fucking years to understand what he meant, but he was telling me to have enough self-respect to ask for / accept respect from others. Nick Offerman is operating on another plane of existence, man.
That's a solid story. It's interesting how people can surprise you. Nick Offerman really seems to get it. His message about self-respect is important, especially in tough situations. It's not every day someone reminds you that you deserve respect, regardless of circumstances. Takes time to fully appreciate those moments. It's a simple, yet powerful lesson. Good takeaway from that experience.
I was working at Bojangles in the drive-thru. Dale Earnhardt came through the drive-thru, and I immediately recognized him. Being starstruck, I said, "Hey, you're Dale Earnhardt." He replied, "And you're just a drive-thru worker. Being 15, this was pretty crushing. I guess it helped in the long run. I joined the military on my 17th birthday, so I wouldn't be stuck doing that for the rest of my life."
That's a real moment. Meeting someone famous can hit hard, especially when you're young. Getting called out like that can be tough. But hey, it sounds like it pushed you to make a big change in your life. Joining the military is a solid step. Sometimes those awkward encounters turn into motivation for something better.
My little brother and I loved professional golf when we were kids, and when Tiger Woods came on the scene as an amateur, we were in awe of him. This was back before he had bodyguards on the course with him. and nearly 15 years before he became an universally acknowledged scumbag. We used to run up to the golfers as they were finishing a round and were heading to the clubhouse or practice areas at a brief moment that we could catch them in person outside of the crowd control barriers. And most guys were willing to oblige a 7 or 8-year-old kid with an autograph. Not Tiger Woods. "Mr. Woods, can I have your autograph?" my brother asked in his bravest voice. And without a word, Tiger stuck out his hand and knocked him down. And he just walked away. Like a bully on the playground, but an adult bully to an 8-year-old kid. Tiger Woods is an asshole.
That's a rough moment for your brother. Kids look up to athletes, and it's tough when they don't live up to those expectations. You'd think someone like Tiger Woods would handle the attention better, especially from kids. Guess that experience stayed with you both, shaping how you view him. Sometimes, people aren't what we imagine. It's a reminder that even heroes can let you down in unexpected ways.
Far from a personal hero of mine, but was to other people at the time, but Ben Roethlisberger. This was about a year or two after he started to go pro, and I worked at an electronics store in his hometown. Mind you, his hometown, his real hometown, not the one he made up later, is a small village of about 40,000 people in the middle of farming country in Ohio. Nice town, but pretty small. One day he comes into our store with 2 hulking bodyguards. He demands to be waited on hand and foot, and barely talks to anyone but the store manager who is kissing his ass, and refuses in photos or autographs. Ironically enough, one of his old teammates from high school was working there that day too. All his did was give him a bro nod and move on. Anyone who acts like this to their small hometown, let alone to retail employees who already get treated like shit every day, is a real asshole in my book.
That's an interesting encounter. You'd think a hometown hero would appreciate where he came from. Instead, he rolls in like he's some big shot. The bodyguards, demands, and the way he ignored everyone else speaks volumes. It's odd how some people forget their roots when they get a bit of fame. That nod from the teammate says it all, too. Just a reminder of what some folks can't seem to grasp.
I interviewed Alton Brown a decade ago. Oh no, there was nothing wrong about meeting him. It's just that I realized after that interview that I was a stupid kid and that I really needed to get my shit together and stop being such a poser. It was a rough realization. Then again, I'm better for it.
That moment sounds like a turning point. Meeting someone you admire can give you a reality check. It's like a mirror reflecting back what you need to change. It's cool to see you took that as motivation to improve. Facing that kind of truth isn't easy, but it seems like it helped you grow. Sometimes those rough realizations lead to better paths.
Won backstage passes to meet Real Big Fish at Warped Tour, the girl I was dating at the time, and I saw their set and hurried backstage to meet them. The lead singer Aaron and the trumpet player Scott came off stage first and shot daggers at us. We told them how we were big fans and had won this contest, and Scott rolled his eyes. We asked for a photo, and they put on sunglasses and faked a smile, took the pic, and left without saying a word to us. However, the rest of the band was super happy to meet their fans. The drummer took a set list and gave it to us, and he and the trombone player chatted with us for quite a bit. Between the interaction with Scott and Aaron and the lackluster other shows I saw RBF perform, I haven't been a fan/listened to them in a few years.
That sounds like an interesting experience. Meeting a band can be hit or miss. It's a shame that the lead singer and trumpet player didn't seem into it, but it's good to hear the rest of the band was more friendly. Those moments can really make or break your feelings towards a band. Sounds like it changed your perspective on them for sure. Overall, a mixed bag of a memory.
As a 70s kid, Star Wars was my life back then. I was obsessed with it all for much of my youth. Literally. Everything I owned, wore, played with, watched, listened to, read, or otherwise consumed was directly Star Wars related. Fast forward many years. I am at San Diego Comic-Con walking the floor. I'm just standing off to the side, people watching, and resting a bit when I casually look up at the person next to me, and it is Mark fucking Hamill. I nearly shit myself. I wanted to say something cool, but my starstruck brain failed me. I used to have your face on my underwear. Yeah, that's the first thing out of my mouth. He had a good laugh. We talked for a few minutes about Star Wars, Joker, and Wing Commander. Pretty soon a few other people recognized him, and he basically said he had to move on. He gave me his autograph and vanished into the crowd.
That's a cool story. Star Wars had such a big impact on a lot of people. Meeting Mark Hamill must have been surreal, especially with how much you admired the franchise. It's funny how sometimes in those moments, our brains just short-circuit. At least you broke the ice with a laugh. Not every day you get to chat with someone from your childhood. The autograph is a nice touch too.
Around 1995, as an 11-year-old, I sent Bill Gates an email telling him that he was my hero. I don't remember exactly what I said, but about 2 days later, I received a generic email back warning me not to send any more spam emails to this address. I felt really sad for a few weeks, but I realized that the email was probably not a response from him, but probably automated.
That's pretty relatable. A lot of us idolize figures when we're young, thinking they might actually connect with us. Getting a generic reply like that can feel like a letdown. It's interesting how we view these icons though, especially when we're kids. Over time, you realize they have their own lives and probably don't even see most of that stuff. Still, it's a memorable moment in a way.
I met Patrick Rufus at Phoenix Comic-Con twice, and was a little disappointed. He just seemed exasperated and in a rush both times, which is sad because by all accounts he absolutely loves his fans. Seems like it was just a stressful weekend, because a friend of mine ran into at a bar after it was all over, and she said he was great to hang out with. On the flip side, Scott Lynch was very nice, and Ian Harrison, winner of Top Shot, was one of the chillest people I've had the pleasure of running into at a party. Edit. Since it keeps getting brought up, I most certainly blame it on the environment and very much give him the benefit of the doubt. I've heard way too many great things about him to think anything otherwise.
I get that. Meeting someone you admire can be a mixed bag. You hope for a genuine connection, but sometimes they're just overwhelmed. Sounds like Rothfuss was having a tough time at that con. It's cool your friend caught him at a bar and he was more relaxed. On the other hand, it's nice to hear about Lynch and Harrison. Good vibes can really make a difference in those encounters.
I grew up watching football with my dad. He was always a car guy, but my technical interests went the way of computers. Not a whole lot of shared interest there, but every Sunday we'd watch football and eat popcorn and yell at the screen. It was the best bonding we had when I was a kid. We'd even occasionally go to games as well. One day, I got a notice that I won a contest for a football team. I would get a lot of free team swag for tickets to an upcoming game, and while wearing a shirt for the chain who was sponsoring the contest, I would get to run onto the field after kickoff to pick up the tee. So we drive up to Cleveland, and as we're walking in the VIP entrance, the team's owner, Art Modell, holds the door open for me. I shake his hand and tell him about how much the team means to me and my family, and he says to me, "It's fans like you who make this team as great as it is." I was fucking ecstatic. The next day he announced he was moving the team to Baltimore.
That sounds like a bittersweet moment. You had this great experience, bonding with your dad over football, and then a gut punch with the team moving. I can relate. Sometimes, you get excited over something, and then it just changes in an instant. Those memories with family are what matter though. Even if the team isn't in the same city anymore, those moments with your dad and the game will always stay.
My dad and his nephew met Slash and Axl Rose at a truck stop. Axl kicked the bathroom door open and almost hit my cousin with it and told him to get out of the way. My cousin threw him against the wall and told him to apologize. Meanwhile, my dad looked at Slash, just daring to jump in, but he just grabbed Axl and walked out. Edit 2, a word. In name, Slash. Wow. My highest rated comment. Thanks all of you.
That's a wild encounter. It's not every day you meet rock legends at a truck stop. Your cousin had some guts standing up to Axl. I wonder what was going through your dad's mind watching it all unfold. At least Slash kept his cool and decided to step back. It's funny how the unexpected moments become the best stories. This one definitely sounds like a memorable experience for your family.
I was at a book signing for Sonia Sotomayor. I was next in line to get my book signed, and the lady in front of places a piece of paper in the table, and Sonia asks, "What is this?" The lady says that has graduated law school. In order to be recognized as an attorney or something like that, she needs to be sworn in. So, Sonia stopped the line and had her sworn in. Pretty classy lady. Not every day you get sworn in by a Supreme Court justice. Edit. Wording/grammar.
That's an interesting story. It's not something you see every day. Getting sworn in by a Supreme Court justice must have felt pretty special for that lady. Shows that some moments can just happen spontaneously. Kind of cool to witness that too. Sonia seems like someone who understands the importance of those little achievements. It's nice when people in power take the time to recognize others.
I think the worst part about being a celebrity is that if you have a bad day, it turns into a story about how you're an asshole. Yeah, they should definitely do their best to never give a fan a bad experience, but you never know what happened that day or that week. Maybe the real lesson of never meet your heroes isn't that they're assholes, it's that they're human.
I get what you're saying. Everyone has rough days, but in the public eye, it feels like there's no room for that. A friend of mine met a favorite musician once, and they seemed off. Turned out, they had just lost a family member. It's easy to forget that celebrities deal with real-life stuff like everyone else. We all have our moments, but not everyone sees that side of things.
At the Motor City Comic Con, Jason Momoa had a panel. This is before I really knew who he was, but he seemed so charismatic and funny. I tried to think of a question. For some goddamn reason, I thought he was playing Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, and asked him what the interview process for it was like. He laughed it off, but I couldn't help feeling shitty the entire rest of the con.
That's a funny mix-up. It's always awkward when you get names or roles wrong, especially in front of someone like him. I guess everyone has those moments. I remember a time I asked an actor about a movie they weren't in. They were cool about it though, and laughed it off. Makes you realize they're just people too. Still, it sticks with you a bit, huh?
When I was in college, I went back to my elementary school to visit the teacher I had in 3rd grade. I was both nervous and excited to see her, and maybe catch up on things. I loved her. She was always patient. She was kind. One time kids were making fun of me, and I ran crying out of the room, and she followed me all the way to the bathroom, just to comfort me until I was ready to go back. I was a sensitive kid, and she was always kind to me. When I visited her, she spent the entire conversation playing solitaire on her computer and nodding and giving half-hearted replies. She glanced at me maybe twice. Her body language was like I wasn't even there. I was so crushed. She did walk me to the door though, so I guess that was nice. I was so sad when I went home. She probably just didn't remember me from so long ago, but I thought maybe at least she could have tried. Maybe it was a long day for her, but man, I was sad.
It's tough when someone you looked up to doesn't seem to remember you. I had a similar experience. I met a high school teacher who inspired me, but during our catch-up, he barely engaged. It felt like I was talking to a wall. I wanted to share how much he meant to me, but the disconnect was real. I left feeling a bit empty, like my memories didn't matter to him anymore.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.